In our hyper-connected world, solitude is often misunderstood. It's seen as loneliness, as a sign of rejection, or worse, failure. Social media fills our screens with constant updates, messages, and distractions, teaching us to fear being alone. Yet, solitude is not the enemy. It's a powerful catalyst for transformation and inner growth. When you allow yourself to be truly alone, something profound begins to happen beneath the surface. The mind, so often overwhelmed by noise, finally quiets. Without external stimulation, your inner world comes into focus. You start to hear the subtle whispers of your own soul, the long-buried desires, fears, and truths that society's noise usually drowns out. Solitude acts as a hidden rewiring process for your brain and spirit. It's where you can untangle the conditioned responses and emotional habits that no longer serve you. In the stillness, your authentic self begins to emerge. You learn to be comfortable with your own presence, to sit with discomfort without distraction, and to reconnect with your intuition. This rewiring isn't always easy, can feel unsettling or even lonely at first, but the discomfort is part of the healing and growth. Solitude is a mirror reflecting your inner landscape, giving you the chance to rewrite old stories and patterns. It's the fertile ground where self-awareness blossoms. By embracing solitude, you reclaim your power. You stop chasing validation and external approval. You become your own source of strength and clarity. And in that space, creativity, peace, and deeper understanding naturally arise. So next time you find yourself alone, don't rush to fill the silence. Instead, lean into it. Welcome the solitude as a sacred pause, a necessary journey inward. The rewiring that happens in these moments is the foundation for a more aligned, resilient, and authentic you. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's the path to freedom.
1. The depth of solitude. Being alone is often misinterpreted. In a world that constantly pushes for connection, productivity, and external validation, solitude is sometimes viewed as a defect, something to be avoided, filled, or escaped. But in truth, solitude is a sacred space. A nuanced, powerful, and necessary phase of personal evolution. Solitude can take many forms. Sometimes it's circumstantial, the result of loss, distance, or transition. Other times, it's intentional, a conscious pulling away from the noise to return to oneself. Whatever the origin, being alone creates a rare opportunity to witness who we are without the influence of others. It strips away performance, expectation, and noise. When we're not performing for others or reacting to the world around us, a deeper layer of awareness begins to emerge. At first, this stillness can feel uncomfortable. We may feel the echoes of loneliness, boredom, or emotional discomfort. But these aren't signs that solitude is wrong. They're signs that the internal world is becoming visible. And within that visibility lies transformation. Solitude becomes a mirror. It shows us the thoughts we've buried, the wounds we've ignored, the dreams we've abandoned, and the parts of ourselves we've forgotten. With no one else to impress, we begin to see what truly matters to us. We start asking deeper questions. What do I really value? What do I truly believe? What parts of me are still unhealed? These are not questions that arise in the rush of daily life. They require silence, space, stillness. And it is only in solitude that we are fully free to explore them without interruption. From this sacred stillness, creativity often awakens. Many of the world's greatest artists, philosophers, mystics, and thinkers have spoken of the clarity that emerges in solitude. It is here that new ideas are born, not through force, but through space. The mind, no longer cluttered with constant input, begins to open. Imagination returns. Intuition strengthens. What once felt like isolation now becomes inspiration. Spiritually, solitude deepens our sense of connection, not separation. When we retreat from the world's noise, we begin to sense the quiet hum beneath it all. Call it intuition, presence, or soul. It is the awareness that you are part of something greater. Paradoxically, the more time we spend in true solitude, the more connected we often feel, not just to others, but to existence itself. This doesn't mean solitude is always comfortable. Growth rarely is. But being alone invites us to build a stronger inner foundation. It teaches us to generate our own peace, rather than search for it externally. It rewires our nervous system, helping us tolerate stillness, regulate emotion, and deepen awareness. Over time, solitude stops feeling like lack, and begins to feel like alignment. You begin to realize that solitude is not the opposite of connection, it's the gateway to authentic connection. Only when you've met yourself can you truly meet others. Only when you are comfortable in your own presence can you be fully present with someone else. So if you find yourself alone, pause before rushing to fill the space. There is wisdom in that quiet. There is healing in that stillness. There is magic in the mirror of solitude, waiting for you to look. Not all who are alone are lost. Some are simply remembering. 2. The spiritual path of solitude. In a world that constantly demands our attention, solitude is often misunderstood, confused with loneliness, or seen as a condition to be remedied rather than embraced. Yet across centuries and civilizations, solitude has been regarded not as an absence, but as a profound presence, a sacred path walked by mystics, sages, monks, and seekers in search of truth. From the stillness of the Himalayas to the silence of desert monasteries, solitude has been cherished by spiritual traditions as a gateway to enlightenment. In Buddhism, monks and nuns retreat into forests and mountains to meditate, seeking direct realization through silence. In Hinduism, sannyasis renounce the world to dwell in ashrams or alone in nature, discovering the eternal self beyond illusion. Christian mystics withdrew to caves and cloisters, listening in the silence for the still, small voice of God. Sufi dervishes, in ecstatic seclusion, turned inward to dissolve the ego and merge with the divine. What connects them all is this: they did not escape the world to abandon life. They entered solitude to understand it more deeply. The practice of retreat, a deliberate pause from the noise and momentum of ordinary life, is a testament to this spiritual instinct. A retreat isn't about running away. It's about coming home, to the innermost self, to the eternal, to the ground of being. In the absence of distraction, we encounter something raw and real. It may be uncomfortable at first, the mind resists, the ego tightens, but beyond that resistance lies peace, insight, and transformation. In solitude, we remember who we are without the mirrors of others. We begin to ask deeper questions. Who am I truly? What is my purpose? What is seeking to emerge through me? These aren't questions the world often encourages, but in silence they echo. Through meditation, prayer, journaling, or simply sitting in quiet awareness, we begin to attune to something subtle yet vast. We sense a deeper rhythm, a spiritual heartbeat that pulses beneath surface noise. Over time, this awareness deepens into a felt sense of connection, not just with the self, but with all life. Solitude becomes a communion, not isolation, but integration with something greater. There's a paradox here. In solitude, we often feel more connected than ever before. When the chatter stills, when the mental fog clears, the soul begins to speak. Not through loud declarations, but through intuitive nudges, images, sensations, and truths that feel ancient and alive. Many describe this as a return, remembering something they always knew but had forgotten in the rush of modern life. And solitude doesn't require a mountain, a monastery, or months away. It can be found in moments: early morning stillness, a quiet walk, intentional silence. It's not about duration, it's about presence. A few minutes of genuine inward attention can be more transformative than hours of distracted activity. Ultimately, the spiritual path of solitude is about integration. We retreat not to stay away from life, but to return to it more whole, more awake, more aligned. It teaches us that silence is not empty, it is full of answers. That being alone is not being abandoned, it is being invited to reconnect with the divine spark within. So when life pulls you inward, don't resist it. Solitude is not a void. It is a sacred space where you meet your essence, and through that, touch the eternal. 3. Solitude and creativity. Solitude is not merely a spiritual sanctuary, it is also one of the most powerful catalysts for creativity, innovation, and deep original thought. In the quiet stillness away from external noise, the mind finds the freedom to stretch beyond the familiar. Unshackled by social expectations, performance pressure, and constant distraction, the imagination begins to breathe, to wander, and to flourish. History offers countless examples of great minds who turned inward and emerged with brilliance. Nikola Tesla, the visionary inventor, once remarked, "The mind is sharper and keener in seclusion and uninterrupted solitude. Originality thrives in seclusion, free of outside influences." His groundbreaking ideas were not birthed in conference rooms or public forums, but in private reverie, hours spent in deep contemplation and inner exploration. Virginia Woolf, in her iconic essay A Room of One's Own, asserted that solitude and personal space are not luxuries but essential conditions for creative expression, especially for women historically denied both. In solitude, one not only hears their own voice more clearly but begins to trust it more deeply. Albert Einstein would often retreat into quiet walks and daydreaming to process scientific puzzles, once saying, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." And Beethoven, struggling with deafness, composed some of his most transcendent symphonies in emotional and social isolation, communing with sound and spirit in the vast concert hall of his own mind. So why is solitude so powerful for creativity? When we are alone, we exit the performance mode of social interaction. We stop curating our words, reactions, and ideas for approval or applause. Our attention turns inward, and what we find there is often raw, unfiltered, and real. This is the sacred space where inspiration arises, where scattered thoughts gather form, and vague sensations become vision. In solitude, we access the subconscious, the part of the mind where intuition, memory, and symbolic thinking live. This inner world is rich with untapped material. It holds not only what we know, but what we feel, what we fear, what we hope. Great art, music, poetry, and invention arise when we dare to enter this space fully. But solitude is not just about isolation from others, it is about presence with oneself. It's not enough to be physically alone. True creative solitude requires stillness, attention, and openness. It asks us to turn off the noise, not just around us, but within us. The inner critic, the doubting voice, the need to produce something worthy. In its place, we are invited to play, to explore, to imagine without boundaries. This state, where time dissolves and we become fully absorbed in the creative act, is often referred to as flow. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who coined the term, found that flow arises most easily in solitude, when the mind is fully engaged but free from interruption. In this space, creativity ceases to be effortful. It becomes natural, even joyful. Of course, solitude also brings discomfort. It forces us to confront silence, boredom, and uncertainty. But in this discomfort lies creative potential. The mind, unoccupied and restless, begins to build new worlds. It rearranges fragments of memory and vision into new patterns. It dares to ask, "What if?" and waits patiently for the answer. Ultimately, solitude is not a void, but a canvas. It is where the creative soul finds color, form, and voice. In a world addicted to constant stimulation and output, choosing solitude can feel radical. But it is often in that radical act that true originality is born. So if you seek inspiration, innovation, or deeper self-expression, don't just look outside. Go inward. Find your own room, your own quiet, your own rhythm. There, in the stillness, you may discover something extraordinary waiting to be revealed. 4. The Poet and the Hermit, Stories from Solitude. Solitude, when chosen and embraced, becomes a sacred space of creation and awakening. Far from being empty or desolate, it is fertile ground, where thoughts deepen, senses heighten, and insight quietly emerges. Two enduring archetypes beautifully illuminate this truth, the poet and the hermit. Imagine the poet, stepping away from the noise of the world, not to escape it, but to hear something deeper. He retreats from conversation and distraction, trading chatter for silence. In this withdrawal, something remarkable happens. The mundane becomes miraculous. He notices the way light filters through a cracked window pane. The gentle rustle of leaves becomes a rhythm. The breath in his lungs takes on a sacred quality. With nothing demanding his attention, the poet begins to observe what most people overlook. His perception sharpens. Feelings long buried begin to surface. Memories unfurl like old scrolls. He captures it all, fragile truths, subtle longings, the dance between joy and sorrow, through verse. What emerges is poetry not crafted for applause, but born of honest solitude. And ironically, it is this deeply personal expression that most powerfully touches others. His aloneness becomes a bridge to shared humanity. His solitude didn't cut him off. It connected him. Because in facing his own inner world, he gave voice to a universal one. Now consider the hermit. This figure has appeared in nearly every spiritual and philosophical tradition, from the Taoist sages of China to the Christian mystics, from the Sufi wanderers to Hindu renunciates. The hermit is not antisocial, but inwardly focused. He doesn't abandon the world out of bitterness, but out of reverence for truth. In his forest dwelling or mountaintop hut, the hermit meditates. He listens, not to podcasts or headlines, but to wind, water, birdsong, and breath. He begins to notice patterns in the chaos, stillness within movement, unity in apparent opposites. The forest is his teacher, silence his scripture. Over time, the veil of separation dissolves. He no longer sees himself as separate from nature, but as part of its sacred tapestry. This life may seem simple, or even lonely by modern standards. Yet the hermit experiences a richness few can imagine. In the space between distractions, he finds peace. In the absence of noise, he hears the voice of the soul. From this space of deep knowing, wisdom blooms. Not as abstract theory, but as embodied truth. And here is the paradox. Both the poet and the hermit, though alone, become deeply connected to beauty, to wisdom, to the pulse of existence itself. Their insights emerge not in crowds, but in stillness. And what they bring back is not detachment, but clarity. In today's world, their paths may look different. The poet might be journaling in a cafe corner. The hermit may be an artist on a silent retreat, a seeker in a minimalist room lit by candlelight. But the inner journey remains the same. Both remind us that solitude is not emptiness, it is presence. Not disconnection, but communion. Not silence, but a deeper listening. In a culture that rushes toward constant interaction, the poet and the hermit offer a different path, one of inward turning, quiet observation, and patient unfolding. They show us that some of the most important revelations in life are not shouted, but whispered. Not found in noise, but in stillness. Not handed to us, but uncovered gently in the quiet corners of our own souls. So if you ever find yourself alone, uncertain, or drawn inward, remember them. The poet, the hermit, the wise ones who remind us the inner world is vast, alive, and waiting. And in solitude it speaks. 5. The shadow of isolation. Solitude, when chosen, can be sacred. It can offer clarity, creativity, and spiritual depth. But not all solitude is created equal. When it becomes prolonged, involuntary, or devoid of purpose, solitude can cast a long, dark shadow. This shadow is called isolation. Isolation is the uninvited guest of loneliness. It creeps in quietly, often unnoticed at first. Perhaps it begins with missed calls, a growing disinterest in connection, or the feeling that no one truly understands. Over time, the silence deepens. Days blur. Self-worth begins to erode. What once felt like peaceful alone time begins to feel like abandonment. Imagine a man slowly withdrawn from the world, not by choice, but by circumstance. Maybe it's the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, or a quiet slide into depression. At first, he convinces himself it's temporary. But weeks pass. He no longer reaches out. No one calls. He feels invisible. And then, worse, unworthy of being seen. The disconnection becomes so profound that he forgets what closeness even feels like. The room is quiet, but so is his soul. This is not solitude. This is spiritual suffocation. Where solitude can be restorative, isolation becomes corrosive. It doesn't hold space for your thoughts, it amplifies your fears. It doesn't open the mind, it closes the heart. In its grip, a person can begin to believe painful illusions, that they are fundamentally broken, unlovable, or forgotten by the world. These internal narratives are dangerous because they often feed on silence. The less we connect, the more we distort. Without others to reflect back truth, compassion, or even simple presence, the mind becomes an echo chamber, where doubt and despair grow louder with every cycle. And yet, this darker aspect of being alone is rarely discussed. In a culture that celebrates individualism and self-reliance, many suffer in secret. We may even praise someone's independence, without realizing they are slowly unraveling inside. It's crucial to make the distinction between solitude and isolation. Solitude is intentional. It is a space for integration, healing, and insight. Isolation is often accidental or forced. It is a state of disconnection, emotional, social, and spiritual. Recognizing the difference is the first act of compassion. The second is to gently reweave the threads of connection, internally and externally. Internally, this might look like returning to the breath, writing down your feelings, or remembering times you felt truly seen. Externally, it could be as small as reaching out to someone you trust, joining a community, or even simply sitting in a public space to feel the presence of life around you. Isolation loses its grip when we name it. When we admit, with tenderness, I feel disconnected. I want to return. And that desire alone can spark a shift, a small but powerful step back toward belonging. Because we are not meant to live entirely apart. Even the mystics, even the monks, eventually return from their solitude to share their insights, their poetry, their presence. If you find yourself in the shadow of isolation, know this: you are not alone in your loneliness. Many have walked this path and emerged wiser, softer, more open. Healing begins not with the noise of the world, but with the quiet courage to say, I want to reconnect. I am still worthy of being seen. There is life on the other side of isolation. And it begins with a single act of reaching, outward, inward, upward. 6. The balance between inner and outer worlds. Solitude and connection are not opposing forces. They are sacred partners in the rhythm of a meaningful life. While the modern world often forces us to choose between being inwardly reflective or socially engaged, the truth is that balance lies at the heart of wholeness. Solitude gives us the gift of clarity. It is in the quiet moments, far from distraction, where we begin to recognize our true voice. In the stillness, we see where we are wounded, where we long to grow, and where our deepest desires reside. Solitude allows us to process the past, listen to the soul, and remember what truly matters. But we are not meant to stay in retreat forever. After the inward descent comes the return. Just as a seed germinates underground before pushing toward the sun, our inner work must eventually express itself outwardly, through presence, creativity, and connection. Even mystics, monks, and visionaries, those who have devoted years to silence, have ultimately stepped forward to share their insights. Through poetry, teachings, or compassionate action, they offered their inner discoveries as medicine to the world. Likewise, artists often disappear into creative solitude, only to return with a painting, a melody, or a story that reminds others of their own humanity. In doing so, they demonstrate a sacred rhythm: retreat to renew, return to contribute. True balance is not about hiding from the world in the name of self-care, nor about losing yourself in service or social performance. It is about flowing between the two states. Like the tide that moves in and out, the soul needs both reflection and expression to thrive. The inner world, your thoughts, feelings, and imagination, is your creative wellspring. The outer world, relationships, experiences, community, is the canvas on which you paint. Without the well, you dry out. Without the canvas, your art remains unseen. So ask yourself, when was the last time you listened deeply within? And when was the last time you allowed that wisdom to shape how you show up in the world? Spiritual maturity is found not in isolation or overstimulation, but in the sacred dance between both. In solitude, you remember your essence. In connection, you embody it. And when you live from that balance, your life becomes more than existence. It becomes a transmission. Conclusion: embracing the stillness. In a world that moves at breakneck speed, where constant noise, notifications, and obligations dominate our attention, stillness is often misunderstood or even feared. Solitude is mistaken for loneliness. Silence is confused with emptiness. And yet, within that stillness lies one of the most powerful gateways to transformation. Solitude, when chosen with intention, is not a void to be filled, it is a sanctuary to be honored. It is in these quiet spaces that we begin to hear ourselves clearly. We untangle the voices of the world from the voice of the soul. We ask the questions we've been too distracted to ask. And often, we find answers not from outside ourselves, but from the soft whisper of inner knowing. Stillness does not mean passivity. It is not about retreating from life, but returning to it more fully awake. When we choose solitude consciously, we give ourselves the space to regenerate, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We reconnect with our essence. We remember who we are without performance, pressure, or pretense. Yet, it's important to recognize the difference between sacred solitude and harmful isolation. While solitude nourishes, chronic disconnection can deplete. This is why wisdom lies in balance. We must learn to listen to our own rhythms, to know when to go inward, and when to open outward, to recognize when silence is healing, and when connection is calling. There is no right formula, only honest self-awareness. In truth, the path to wholeness is not linear. It spirals through stillness and movement, solitude and community, reflection and engagement. Each season of life asks something different of us. Our task is to stay attuned, to trust that both quiet and connection serve a sacred role in our becoming. So let us not fear the silence. Let us embrace it. Let us allow solitude to be not a punishment, but a portal. Let us honor the quiet moments that remind us that everything we seek already lives within. Because sometimes, the most profound guidance, creativity, and healing arise not from the noise of the world, but from the still, sacred voice that speaks when we dare to be alone.